The Amazon has long been whispered about as the green lung of the world, a vast pulsating cathedral of biodiversity and life. But lungs can fail. They can fill with fluid, they can char, and they can cease to breathe. In the heart of this ancient wilderness, a transformation is occurring that defies the natural order. The idyllic postcards of lush riverbanks and cool misty mornings are being incinerated. What remains is a landscape of heat and silence. We are witnessing the birth of a planetary cauldron. The fresh water that once sustained millions of species is no longer a sanctuary, it has become a weapon. In the years 2023 and 2024, the threshold of survival was crossed. The lakes of the Amazon didn't just warm, they reached a boiling point of ecological endurance. This is not a cautionary tale. This is an autopsy of an environment turning into a mass grave. Imagine standing at the edge of Lake Tefé. The air is still, heavy with a humidity that feels like a damp shroud. You look at the water, expecting the ripple of a fish or the playful arc of a dolphin. Instead, you see steam. The water has reached 41 degrees Celsius for human. This is the temperature of a relaxing spa, a temporary indulgence in heat. But for the creatures that call this water home, it is a slow-motion execution. At 41 degrees, the very chemistry of life begins to unravel. Protein structures break down. Oxygen, the invisible currency of underwater survival, vanishes. The lake is no longer a body of water. It is a pressurized cooker. The fish are not swimming. They are being prepared. This is a literal fish soup, seasoned with the ash of a burning planet. Scientists from the Mamira Institute for Sustainable Development have begun to map this new reality with a clinical, terrifying precision. Their data, published in the most prestigious journals, describes a world that has gone into cardiac arrest. Of the lakes studied, half saw daytime temperatures exceed 37 degrees. In Lake Tefé, the peak of 41 degrees was not a freak occurrence, but a harbinger. These lakes have become sentinels, the canaries in the coal mine. But unlike the canary that dies of silent gas, these ecosystems are dying in the most violent thermal way possible. They are being perfectly cooked by a sky that has turned into a furnace. The mechanics of this catastrophe are a perfect storm of environmental betrayal. The first accomplice is the drought. The once majestic Amazonian lakes, fed by the mightiest rivers on Earth, have been reduced to shallow puddles. When water levels drop, the volume of the lake decreases, leaving it unable to buffer the relentless assault of the sun. Imagine a shallow basin left out in the desert. It absorbs every joule of energy, heating up almost instantly. The lakes are shrinking, becoming tiny, concentrated traps. They are no longer epic bodies of water. They are embarrassed puddles, unable to hide from the radiation of a cloudless sky. Clouds were once the Earth's natural air conditioner, a reflective shield that kept the heat at bay. But the shield has been shattered. Cloudless skies over the Amazon allow solar radiation to beat down with a relentless, punishing intensity. The surface of the water becomes a scorching hot plate. Then comes the second accomplice, turbidity. The water is thick with suspended particles, a murky broth of silt and organic matter. This cloudiness is not a shield. It is a trap. These particles act like billions of microscopic microwave ovens, absorbing the sun's heat, trapping it within the water column, and forcing the temperature to rise even further. The water cannot reflect the light. It can only consume it until it glows with a lethal energy. But the most subtle villain in this tragedy is the silence of the wind. In a healthy ecosystem, the wind is a cooling breath, facilitating evaporation and dispersing heat from the surface. But in the recent heat waves, the air went dead. Stillness became an executioner. Without the wind to move the surface, the water couldn't breathe. Evaporation slowed to a crawl, trapping the heat within the lake like a giant greenhouse. This stillness was more devastating than the temperature increase itself. The air refused to move, and the water had no choice but to absorb the fire from above. It was a convection oven without a fan, a closed system of escalating death. This is not an isolated event. It is a trend that has been silently accelerating for 30 years. Amazonian lakes have been warming by nearly a degree every decade. It is an inexorable slow-motion thermal creep that is gradually transforming these ecosystems into something unrecognizable. It is like a software update that slowly erases the core functions of a machine until it is nothing more than a useless piece of hardware. The 2024 drought was so severe that Lake Tefé shrank by 75%. Lake Badajoz fared even worse, losing 90% of its extent. These are no longer lakes, they are scars on the landscape. The mass die-offs that follow are heartbreakingly absolute. The surface of the water becomes littered with the silver scales of millions of fish, their eyes clouded by the heat. But the most haunting image is the death of the freshwater dolphins. The pink river dolphin, a creature of myth and beauty, is being found bloated and peeling in the shallows. These are highly intelligent, social mammals, the peak predators of the river system. To see them ending up in a part of their own habitat is a sign that the system has reached its breaking point. When the top of the food chain is cooked alive, the base has already turned to dust. For the human communities that line these banks, the disaster is existential. They rely on these fish for their survival, for their economy, for their very way of life. Without the fish, the community starves. It is a disaster comparable to the sudden disappearance of water in a desert city. The new normal is a future where the Amazon is no longer a lush paradise, but a series of shallow, fishless, boiling aquariums. It is a future we did not expect, yet it is the one we have constructed with every carbon molecule pumped into the atmosphere. The descent into this thermal abyss is gradual, but its conclusion is final. Science gives us the graphs and the models to understand the collapse, but it cannot describe the smell of a boiling lake or the silence of a jungle where the water has stopped supporting life. We must look at these boiling lakes not as faraway tragedies, but as mirrors. They are reflections of a world that is losing its balance. We cannot turn these lakes back into cool oases overnight, but we can acknowledge the horror of what we have allowed to happen. The Amazonian lakes are crying out, not with sound, but with heat. They are sentinels of a global shift that is turning the blue parts of our map into red zones of extinction. Every action that contributes to climate change is a log on this fire. Every degree of warming is a tighter grip around the throat of the dolphins and the fish. We are watching the lung of the world char, and the water is the oil in the pan. There is a terrifying resilience in nature, but heat is the ultimate limit. When the chemistry of the water changes, when the oxygen leaves, when the temperature mirrors that of a spa, the story of the Amazon enters its final chapter. We are left to wonder if our descendants will even know what a cool river felt like, or if they will only know the Amazon as a legend, a place that used to be green before it turned into a boiling graveyard. The stillness of the wind, the low depth of the puddles, and the relentless sun have combined to create a reality straight out of a nightmare. The Amazon has adopted a motto of hotter is better, and the results are catastrophic. We are part of this story, whether we choose to act or simply watch the steam rise. The heat waves are becoming more frequent, more intense, and more lethal. The canaries are already dead, and the miners are starting to feel the heat. The science is fun when it talks about the stars or the wonders of the cell, but when it talks about boiling lakes, it is a wake-up call that sounds like a scream. We are diving into a world where the water is no longer a friend. We are exploring the edges of an environmental thriller where we are both the victims and the villains. The Amazonian hot tub is open, but the only relaxation it offers is the peace of the grave. As the sun sets over Lake Tefé, the steam continues to rise, a ghostly veil over a world that is being cooked alive. The dolphins are gone, the fish are still, and the jungle waits for a rain that may never be cool again. This is the new normal. This is the boiling point. This is the end of the green lung. We are left with the silence, the heat, and the memory of a paradise that couldn't survive the fire we started. The inexorable global warming is transforming these ecosystems into something unrecognizable. It is a slow, painful metamorphosis from life to death. The Amazon is no longer a place of coolness and shade. It is a sentinel of the fire to come. Look at the water, feel the steam, and understand that the earth is not just warming, it is reaching a fever that it may not survive. The cauldron is full, and the fire is still burning. Stay curious, but stay terrified, for the boiling lakes are just the beginning of the end.